The air inside the packed morning flight felt strangely heavy, as if hundreds of silent stories floated between the rows, waiting to collide with one another. But among all those ordinary travelers, two lives were about to cross in a way no one on that plane would ever forget. A little girl with bright hazel eyes, wearing a sunflower yellow hoodie, sat swinging her feet, holding a small zip-locked cookie as if it were the most precious treasure she owned. Beside her sat her father, the mighty corporate figure Arsene Vale, CEO of a multinational tech empire, eyes glued to his tablet, drowned in a world of deadlines and numbers. And a few rows away struggled a tired young woman named Mira Elwood, a poor single mother who had spent her last savings to board this very flight with her tiny toddler sleeping on her shoulder. What none of them knew was that a single innocent question whispered by a child would unravel hidden wounds, lost hopes, and unexpected kindness, changing all three lives forever. Before we dive deeper into this emotional journey, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness to support more heart-touching stories like this one. As the plane continued boarding under the warm daylight pouring through the windows, Mira tried her best to balance her son, Rowan, while adjusting the frayed backpack containing everything she owned. She hadn't slept properly in days. Life had been relentlessly cruel. An eviction notice taped to her door, her cafe job gone due to downsizing, and the last blow, her late mother's medical debt suddenly resurfacing, swallowing every penny she had. Her only chance at survival was an interview scheduled in another city, an opportunity as fragile as a soap bubble, yet it was her last hope to rebuild a life for her son. She winced when Rowan's little hand clutched her shirt tighter in his sleep. He deserved better than a mother who was barely keeping herself upright, but she kept whispering to herself that somehow things would turn around. Meanwhile, in row 3A and 3 billions, the world appeared entirely different. Arsene Vale was a storm disguised as a man, successful, wealthy, and powerful, but clouded by a loneliness he never acknowledged. After his wife passed away 3 years earlier, fame and money felt more like a cage than a blessing. His daughter, Sienna Vale, only 6 years old, was the only spark left in his life. She was gentle, curious, and far wiser than her age allowed. But Arsene rarely noticed it. Business overshadowed everything, and though he provided Sienna with every material comfort, he barely provided his presence. Sienna, however, never complained. She simply waited for moments when her father might look up from his glowing screens and see her, truly see her. The plane roared to life, and Mira, seated now in row 8 degrees Celsius, exhaled shakily. The daylight streaming through the oval window made Rowan's cheeks glow softly. She stroked his hair, whispering prayers she wasn't even sure she believed in anymore. As the plane taxied forward, turbulence rattled everyone slightly. Rowan whimpered in his sleep, and Mira rubbed his back gently, trying to soothe him. Exhaustion weighed like bricks on her shoulders, but she forced herself to stay awake. During mid-flight, soft announcements played overhead, and flight attendants began rolling down snack carts. Sienna peeked over the seat to see what people were eating. Her eyes sparkled with innocent excitement when she spotted Mira struggling to manage her drink and her sleeping toddler. Something about Mira looked different to her. Perhaps it was the quiet sadness behind her eyes or the tenderness with which she protected her son. Sienna couldn't explain it, but she felt drawn to her. She held her cookie tighter, the one her father always bought for her every flight, the one she never ate but kept as a small comfort object. Today, however, that cookie suddenly felt like something she wanted to give away. Sienna slipped off her headphones and tapped her father's arm. Arsene glanced briefly, offering a distracted hum while typing an urgent email. Sienna's gaze wandered toward Mira again, who was now struggling to adjust Rowan after he woke up crying softly. People nearby cast annoyed glances, but Mira didn't have the energy to apologize anymore. She just rocked him gently, murmuring soft reassurances. A little later, the flight hit unexpected turbulence, startling everyone. Sienna gripped her armrest tightly. Her breathing quickened. She always feared sudden shakes like this. They reminded her of a night she wished she could forget. Mira noticed the little girl's fear even from several rows away. When Rowan calmed, Mira looked towards Sienna with empathy, remembering how children often masked their fears to avoid burdening adults. The turbulence settled, but the emotional ripple had begun. Minutes passed. Arsene received a call notification through in-flight Wi-Fi about a major deal crisis. His stress skyrocketed. He muttered to himself while typing furiously, completely missing the way Sienna's eyes filled with tears as she watched him drift farther from her world again. She clutched her cookie so tightly the wrapper crinkled loudly. Suddenly, another slight turbulence bump jolted the plane, and Sienna couldn't hold back anymore. She slipped out of her seat and quietly walked down the aisle, stopping beside Mira. Her tiny voice trembled, her cookie held out with both hands. She looked at Mira and whispered the words that would bind their lives forever. "If I share my cookie, will you stay?" Her voice was fragile, almost pleading, not to Mira exactly, but to the warmth she sensed in her, the warmth she deeply missed. Mira blinked in confusion, surprised. Sienna seemed like a child reaching for something she longed for but couldn't explain. Mira gently took the cookie, not wanting to break the girl's heart. She smiled. Softly, the first real smile she had managed in days. She thanked Sienna and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Sienna then looked up with hopeful eyes, silently asking for emotional shelter more than anything else. Rowan, now awake, looked at the girl curiously. Sienna giggled softly, easing the tension around them. Mira lifted Rowan slightly so Sienna could see him better. In that warm, gentle interaction, something shifted. Mira felt unexpectedly seen, and Sienna felt unexpectedly understood. Arsene realized minutes later that his daughter was gone from her seat. Panic flared in him and he jumped up. When he saw her standing peacefully beside Mira, his voice caught in his throat. Something about the scene, the struggling mother, the toddler, and his daughter seeking comfort elsewhere, stabbed him deeper than he expected. Walking toward them, he apologized to Mira, embarrassed. But Mira only offered a polite nod. She understood more than most people how easily life swallows adults, pulling them away from what matters. Sienna clung to Mira's side, and Arsene felt a sting of guilt heavier than any corporate burden. The flight attendants gently suggested Sienna return to her seat, but before she left she whispered something to Mira that only she heard. It made Mira's eyes gloss with tears she hid quickly. She carried Rowan back to her seat, the cookie resting on her lap like a symbol of unexpected kindness. Arsene sat down, but his mind couldn't return to business. He kept glancing back toward Mira, noticing the faint exhaustion on her face, the frayed backpack, the way she tried to keep everything together despite life clearly falling apart. He saw a strength he couldn't name, and for the first time he wondered how many burdens people around him carried silently while he drowned in his own world. As the plane began its descent, a sudden technical delay forced it to circle for nearly an hour. Cabin lights shifted softly, and passengers grew restless. Rowan became fussy again, and Mira looked overwhelmed. Without fully understanding why, Arsene unbuckled slightly and approached her. In a gentle voice he hadn't used in years, he offered help. Mira hesitated, unused to kindness, but eventually allowed him to hold Rowan for a moment. To her surprise, Arsene handled the toddler with surprising tenderness, the kind of fatherly warmth he rarely had time to express. Something inside him melted as Rowan clung to his shirt. Sienna beamed with pride, as if she had sparked this entire transformation. Mira confessed quietly about her job loss and her desperate trip for an interview. Arsene listened closely, his heart shifting with every word. By the time the plane finally landed, the emotional distance between the three felt bridged by something profound. At baggage claim, while the daylight filtered over them like a blessing, Mira prepared to leave with Rowan. She thanked Arsene and Sienna softly, expecting never to see them again. But Sienna stepped forward, gently tugging her father's sleeve. Her eyes pleaded for something she couldn't articulate in words but felt deeply. Arsene inhaled slowly, then turned to Mira with sincerity. He offered her a business card, not out of pity, but because he saw resilience, talent, and a woman who refused to break despite life's crushing weight. He told her to show up at his company's headquarters after her interview, regardless of the outcome. Mira felt a wave of shock, gratitude, and disbelief crash over her all at once. She didn't know whether to cry or smile, but the warmth in Sienna's eyes convinced her that this opportunity wasn't charity, it was destiny. Days later, Mira received a call that changed everything. The company she interviewed with chose another candidate. She sank onto her couch, devastated. But then she remembered the card. Trembling, she made her way to the address. Arsene welcomed her personally. He had reviewed her background, resilience, and potential, and in that moment he offered a position, not as an assistant or clerk, but as a community engagement coordinator, a role that matched her heart, her strength, and her story. That job changed her life. Within months, Mira found stability, confidence, and a new sense of hope. Rowan had a safe home, and Sienna gained a warm friend who taught her the meaning of emotional connection her father had long forgotten. Watching Mira interact with his daughter slowly reshaped Arsene too. He learned to pause more, to breathe more, to love more. One day, while Mira worked late, Sienna visited her office and placed a cookie on her desk, the same kind from the flight. She smiled and whispered a simple truth that Mira would hold on to forever: you stayed. If this heartfelt journey touched your soul even a little, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness to support more beautiful stories like this. Special request, please comment your thoughts about the moment you felt the deepest connection in the story. And with that, the story ends. Proof that sometimes the smallest act, a shared cookie, can change someone's world in ways they never imagined.